Thank you so much. It is truly a privilege to be here today. And I can see that I have one of these flippers in my pocket, but I must have been bumping it because it's not where it's supposed to be. So I'll see if I can get it back to where I want it to be. Okay, so I am so thrilled to be here with you today. I thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you. And today we're going to focus on unleashing compelling possibilities for the future. And I want you to carefully look around at each and every person sitting in the room around you. Each person sitting in this room is a compelling possibility for the future. I would argue that each person sitting in this room is already a pretty compelling reality today. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So let me tell you just for a moment about my story. I've always been about helping people. You could say I've got helping people in my DNA. I was once the youngest county welfare director in the state of Indiana at the age of 25. By the time I hit 30, I realized that in spite of our best of intentions, what we were doing in the welfare system was not truly helping people, at least not most people, in a meaningful way. So I started looking for a more meaningful way to help people, and what I discovered is I discovered a thought leader who was helping affect change in people. So I took a 64-hour course, and I was so excited by my ability to affect change in helping people after that 64-hour course that it got me to do what I do today. And the next step in that was I actually went to graduate school through an external degree program before they were popular, and even before it was affiliated with the university, so I could learn more from this thought leader. So I went to school full-time while I worked full-time. I did that for a couple of years, and by the time I was done with my education, I realized that it was possible to transform a welfare system. We could actually have a welfare system in our nation that actually worked for everyone. So then I spent 7 years of my life affecting change as a leader within Indiana's welfare system in Montgomery County, Indiana. I actually had the opportunity to present at a couple of national conferences on welfare reform, and I actually had an opportunity to speak at a leadership conference in Indiana about the direction of the state of Indiana in welfare a few years ago, quite a few years ago. And I also had 7 years experience driven by a vision to affect people's lives. Except it wasn't just the lives of those people that were on assistance, it was the lives of the people in this room. It was about all of us working together to make a system truly work. So the most interesting thing happened about 2 months into my endeavor. I used to call my parents 2 and 3 times a week, and I would share with them success stories, things that were happening. I was really excited. And you know how parents are. They get really excited with their children when something good happens. So my father, at nearly the age of 70, got a psychology game out of the attic that he invented when he was a young man. And at the age of 70, he started transforming the psychology game into a program to help young people learn to think, reason, and solve problems without violence. Between the ages of 70 and 80, my father traveled around this country. He actually was in Columbus, Indiana, at the Youth Services Center, and he worked with training adults how to work with children, young adults that were in trouble with the law and juvenile delinquents, and how to think, reason, and solve problems without violence by asking open-ended questions and using a trained facilitator to then facilitate discussion. So he had positive peer influence. My father's work culminated in presenting at 2 national conferences. One was in Atlanta, Georgia for the juvenile justice system in the United States. The other was in Toronto, Canada for the juvenile justice system in Canada. I was lucky enough to co-present with my father at both of those, and I can tell you that it was a pretty exciting experience. But most importantly, my father touched a lot of people's lives between the ages of 70 and 80, and again, it's still happening today. And then the other thing I want you to know is my father was a Rotarian for nearly 4 decades, roughly 4 decades. Do you suppose it's a coincidence he's a Rotarian? He spent the last 10 good years of his life doing what he did. So when I look at you, I know you're already success stories. In fact, I know you already, people in this room have already touched people's lives in meaningful ways. You've unleashed compelling possibilities. In fact, some of you may not know this, but I have never seen Wonder Woman and a particular member of this club in the same place at the same time. And there's a reason why, because Wonder Woman is a member of your club. And not only that, but there's actually several very distinguished people that are members of this club. I'm in awe to be speaking to you. And what I invite you to do is, in spite of how awesome you already are, I do invite you to keep your mind open to the possibility that it might be a useful idea that I can plant in your mind today. Imagine every Rotarian taking daily action to unleash gifts for humanity hidden within someone. In the process of unleashing hidden potential in another, you will find that you're actually honing an unusual leadership skill. It's a learned skill, and there's no limit as to how effective you can become. Consider who could potentially benefit from your taking this action. So we're going to have three outcomes for today. One is I'm going to introduce you to a few ideas from a disciplined practice that can help you unleash compelling possibilities in others. Two is I'm going to provide you with a useful definition of a vision and how to unleash its inherent power. And three, I'm going to invite you to accept a specific 30-day call to action to benefit our community and humanity. I do want you to all know that there's a special guest here today that's here because I invited him, and that's Bob Weimer. Bob Weimer is my mentor through SCORE. So if I do really well today, you can thank him afterwards because he's had something to do with it. And if I don't do really well today, then you can still thank him, because just imagine what it'd be like if he hadn't been my mentor. So leadership skills, it includes not just simply seeing people who they already are. It's empowering, bringing forth bold, noble, and compelling possibilities for who each person can become. If you want, you can think of it as being like in a cocoon, and we really want to get people out of that cocoon and see colors. And I know, again, already there's many people who I've seen flap your wings in this room, and I'm already in awe by that. I took a picture of my elementary school girlfriend, so please don't tell my wife if you know her. But I thought I'd include her as we talk about learning, because we've all been to school, we've all learned how to learn through books. And if you go to the dictionary and you look up the word learning, this is what you would find in Merriam-Webster's. And if I had my prop with me, I would take a piece of paper and I would rip it up into a small wad and I would toss it down, because I invite you as a leader to not use a dictionary definition for learning. And the reason I invite you to do that is because it's too important of a word to allow yourself to be defined by what's in the dictionary. Rather, instead, draw a distinction between two different orders of learning. One is first order learning, which is in taking in, comprehending, and recalling information. So you might say in the course of this 20 minutes, you'll be doing a little bit of that today. And then there's second order learning, utilizing knowledge and or skills to expand your ability to produce results. You could say it's useful learning, and that's where I invite you to focus. So people often fail to learn powerful ideas at the second order. So many of you might, at the end of my speech, conclude whether or not it was worthwhile, but I'm inviting you to take action first before you make that conclusion. Second, first order learning is not necessarily useful in producing results. And then the fifth thing I want to focus on is second order learning is actually a continuous improvement process. There is no limit as to how effective any one of us can become as a leader, as long as we keep our mind open to learning. So we're really focusing on the disciplined practice of constructivist thinking. And I'm going to take you on further on this road to this disciplined practice. Few people even know that this word exists. Of those that do, even fewer appreciate its value. Before we go on to this other road, I want to first focus for a minute on the traditional road. The traditional road, we look at knowledge as providing us with accurate information about our world. We look at scientific theories that hold up to rigorous experimentation as being proven, as being discoveries about how the world actually works. And then our five senses are considered to give us a very good way of viewing the world, perceiving the world. And in fact, I'll bet there's nobody here today that got in an automobile accident on the way to the Rotary Club meeting, because our five senses really are pretty good. And then most of us live our lives as if the way we see it is the way the world really is. And while we have very distinguished people in this room that can be of different political persuasions and get along together, there are some places where you have people that are so locked into the way they see things that they're convinced that they're right and everybody else is wrong. And yet they can't both be right, can they? Most of us cannot see the self-fulfilling prophecies that our knowledge and our beliefs create. So this road less traveled, you probably recognize the face in the picture. It's Albert Einstein. And he once said, no amount of experimentation could ever prove me right. A single experiment can prove me wrong. He spent his entire scientific career focused on not believing he'd proven anything. And because of that, he was able to actually invent theories that contradicted one another. And they're all very valuable. And what I'm inviting you to do, this discipline practice, I want you to take the mindset of a true scientist and apply it to fields outside of science. And when you do, you'll know that reality cannot be known with certainty. All we can know for certain is what reality is not. So knowledge more or less fits reality. It's not an exact match. Knowledge, like beliefs, can be limiting. Limiting knowledge and limiting beliefs can readily be set aside instead of constraining us. So let me give you a specific example. When I was in my 30s in graduate school, I was shy. A shy person would not be up here today. So that was an example of knowledge that was not useful for me, and I chose to set it aside. So perceiving creatively, we all have the ability to do that. In just a moment, I'll show you an experiment to show that many people in this room actually perceive creatively. Perceiving is a creative act. It does involve all five of our senses, and it's always influenced by our knowledge, our beliefs, and our past experiences. And then we each have the capacity to see any person as a compelling possibility for the future. Any person. So here is a test, a perceiving test. I want you to read what you can see in the triangle to yourself. I've given you a chance to read it. So many of you in the room read Paris in the Spring. Congratulations, you've just demonstrated your creativity. Some of you read Paris in the Spring. And you would have been the one that actually read it accurately. See, all the time, we perceive what we expect to see, and we tend to not notice things that are unexpected, outside of what we know or what we believe to be true. So, I want to focus today on vision, because vision is one way that we can perceive the world in a creative way. We can blend useful knowledge with useful beliefs and add vision to come up with a useful way of perceiving the world. So you could say when we perceive creatively, we can intersect vision with our future. So again, if I had this sheet of paper in here, I would take this Merriam-Webster's definition and I would rip it up and set it aside. Because for you as a leader, I don't want to limit yourself by this definition. Instead, I invite you to consider this one, that a vision is a bold, noble, and compelling possibility for the future combined with a personal commitment and action. Without personal commitment and action, you have no vision. So there was a gentleman, W.H. Murray, that attempted to climb Mount Everest, the very first expedition to climb it in 1951. He wrote a really awesome book about that experience. In that book, he talked about what happened when they made the commitment to climb Mount Everest. He talked about how all sorts of things appeared that would have never otherwise occurred. You see, what happens when you make a commitment to realize a vision, you actually begin to see the world through the vision if you take action each day. The way in which you see the world shifts, and the possibilities that you see are different than what other people see. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will live one day in a nation where they're not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." He spoke those words on August 28, 1963. In 1968, at the age of 14, Jarvis Cooper heard Dr. Martin Luther King speak in Memphis, Tennessee. He came here in March and presented a program for you. He spoke just a couple months ago about how even today he's still profoundly affected by that vision that he heard spoken many years ago. So I ask you to think, was it a bold vision? Was it compelling? Was it noble? And was there a clear commitment on the part of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to make that vision a reality? And did he take action? And actually, he encouraged many people to take action. On September 12, 1962, President John F. Kennedy said, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade." On July 20, 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped first foot upon the moon. Once again, I ask you, is it bold? Is it noble? Is it compelling? Was it a clear public commitment? And was there action taken? And I believe you'll find, once again, the answer to all these questions is yes. So I'm going to focus on a couple things. We like to use recipes in the work that we do. And you could say there's a recipe for unleashing the power of a vision. And the first thing in the recipe I've got is create a useful way of perceiving current reality. If you look at the 2 people that I just referenced, you could say that how they perceive reality included their faith. They were both deeply religious people. and they both had a belief in people's capabilities. At the time President Kennedy spoke the words, the scientists that were closest to the president said, "It's impossible, it can't be done." Yet in spite of that, he was able to rally people to actually get it done. There I want to mention is in sharing the vision, quite often companies that have a vision get mixed up between the words leadership and the word management. You cannot effectively evoke passion out of a vision if you try to manage it. You can only do it by leading it by example, by making a commitment and following through yourself, and then engaging others in a persuasive, influential way and not in a way of a directive way. So a couple of quick stories, and first I want you to know that that's my artwork in the center of this screen. It's a bunch of boxes. Each box represents what's possible. You could say we all live our life like we live in a box, and the box represents what's possible for us. And we all have the capability to break out of a box into something, a bigger possibility. And when you break out of a box into a bigger possibility, you become an inspiration for the people with whom you work to break out of a box as well. So a couple of quick stories. Susie was somebody that I met in the work that I do now. I led a workshop on vision, and Susie was in the audience, and at the end of the session, she came up and approached me afterwards. And she was really excited about and wanted to meet with me for a cup of coffee. So we got together for a cup of coffee, and she shared with me that she had a picture of herself speaking before thousands of people and telling her story. And her story included that when she was a child, she was sexually molested. When she was an adult, she was a victim of domestic violence. And she also had experiences of being emotionally damaging to her children and to her husband now, who's not abusive. And she shared with me she had a vision of telling her story in front of thousands of people. So I told her she wanted to share that story, that she needed to focus first on a happy ending, because people like to hear stories with happy endings, and she was not yet at a happy place. And I shared with her that some of the people I went to graduate school that were most effective in affecting change in families were people that had once been victims and then taken that on as a calling. So I didn't see her for a while, and I was leading another training for a different organization, and it was a second session, so I was asking for people to share about their examples for empowerment. One of the participants shared some great stories about how they were using empowerment to affect people's lives. So afterwards, I approached this person and said, "I'd love to get together and we'd have a cup of coffee so I learn more about what you've been doing," because I was really impressed with what she'd done. It was only when we got together for that cup of coffee that I learned that she was the person that had had the traumatic experiences when she was a child. And she shared with me that she was no longer causing emotional damage to her daughter or to her husband, and she was now 100% committed on helping her teenage daughter unlearn what she had learned from her mother. Another story involves somebody named Mary. I'm lucky enough to do some volunteer work for the Bartholomew County Works program. It's an awesome program. It's sponsored by United Way and involves many not-for-profit organizations working together to help people become self-sufficient. Susie was a participant in that program, and she heard me talk about vision in that program. Susie, after that program, started corresponding with me by text because I passed out my business cards. And what Susie shared with me, she had a vision of having her own art studio. And she was somebody that had come through some hard places in life. She had been a victim of domestic violence. She had been in a domestic violence shelter. And yet she was touched by the possibility that she could make a difference in the lives of others. So she started painting again. And she also went to work. And today she has a full-time job with benefits. She's doing really well. And she has her dream that's very alive in her that one day she's going to have her own art studio. So you could say we're all meant to shine as children do. Marian Ann Williams is who I'm quoting here. And you can see the face of the baby. You all have that in you too. And some of you shine more often than others. Some of you may recognize the face in this picture. And who he is interacting with, he has his 1-year-old grandson on the other side. So you can only see Charlie Farber's face, but you can imagine the face of his 1-year-old grandson. I'd be willing to bet it's shining just as much as Charlie's is. And Charlie did give me permission to share this, by the way, otherwise I would never do it. But I wanted to show you, when you have somebody who allows themselves to shine like this around other people, they're a joy to be around. And for those of you that have been lucky enough to work with Charlie, you know that he often shines like this around adults too. And yet, most adults will shine around a baby. So you could say that each of us has hidden within us a compelling possibility for the future. So here's a couple questions you could ask somebody that might begin to get at this. One is, what makes you shine? Another is, where is your passion? So there's a church in this community, I won't mention the name, but a few people here know this, that there's actually a minister that says from the pulpit, he asks these questions. What makes you shine? Where's your passion? And that's why I picked those particular questions, because I find myself drawn to those questions. So many of you know Mark Rothbart. Mark Rothbart, 4 years ago, approached me on 2 occasions, 30 days apart. He nudged me. You know, Mark has this really positive passion, energy that he's got. The first time he approached me, I felt good about what he approached me about, and I was flattered, and yet I took no action. 30 days later, when he nudged me a second time, he got me moving. He got me focusing on what I want to do for the rest of my life, and for me, it was a vision, and the vision is living today, and that's what I'm doing here and now. It's my personal vision for my future. And it would have only happened this quickly thanks to Mark. I don't know if it would have ever happened otherwise. I think it would have, but I certainly wouldn't be in front of you today. So some of you might want to ask Mark how he can undo it. I don't know, but anyway, I do appreciate Mark very much. And that's a possibility. He was a Rotarian too. And that's a possibility of what a Rotarian can do. So I'm inviting you, before I give you a call to action, to look at it from the 4-way test, because I know you're going to do that whether I invite you to or not. And here's the invitation. I want you to make a 30-day commitment to do one thing each day to help unleash hidden potential within someone. So again, if it's hidden, that means you do not yet see it yourself. Now, I can tell you that there's many people in this room that have opened up possibilities for people. In fact, perhaps everyone in this room has. But I'm talking about where you do not yet see it present. And then translate your commitment into taking action that involves no more than 10 minutes in any given day. Forgive yourself any day when you fall short, and just go back at it the next day. And then watch for unanticipated benefits that result from your taking action. Again, an example was Mark approached me, nudged me to do one thing, and here I am doing this. Another example is I was sharing with my father some of my successes, and he took action. And it was not what I was planning for him to do at all. However, I've since started working on people that are retired. The oldest person who I've tried to influence was 92 years old, and I stopped chasing him when he went into the nursing home. And the next oldest person is 88 years old, and she's someone who responded really well to the work that I do. And one of the best students that I have is 83 years old when I was working with her. So there's no one here that's not someone who I would love to work with. So I want to acknowledge you. It's absolutely a privilege for me to be doing this with you today. I encourage you to take action. I know you already take action, but I encourage you to take a special action because I believe there's a skill that you can hone. And you can do this simply by taking action each day, asking open-ended questions to stimulate people's thinking about their future. And it doesn't matter what age the person is. So there are handouts on the table. Please take a handout with you if you're interested. And I want to thank you so much, and I can take some questions. I believe we've got a couple minutes for questions. Is there any questions? You've been a great audience. Thank you so much.